I feel a lot of online cultural commentators tend to narrowly focus on thing bad versus thing good when discussing shows and movies. They're not wrong to, as deciding whether or not a thing is bad is part of the job description, but treating thing bad as the whole of the conversation means you're often going to skim over cultural context and the likely decisions that were made that led to the creation of said bad thing in the first place. And there is no show that critical analysis is going to suffer more for skimming over the cultural context than British comedy duo Mitchell and Webb's new sketch show, Mitchell and Webb Are Not Helping. Cause it being good or bad is easily the least interesting thing about this show. So, a little history. For about 40 years, one of the most popular formats for British TV comedy was the sketch show. A comedian, or more often than not a group of comedians, would make 30-minute strings of about 10 sketches in a series of 6 or more episodes. In the 90s, the big ones were Harry Enfield and Chums, The Fast Show, and a bit of Fry and Laurie. A couple of decades before that, Monty Python's Flying Circus perfected the format of a 3-minute scene in which something funny is happening, then suddenly we're somewhere else entirely with a different character and a different funny thing happening. In the 2000s, the sudden monumental success of Little Britain led to this bubble where broadcasters were commissioning sketch comedy shows left, right and centre, and suddenly there were thousands of them. And that bubble was obviously going to burst sooner or later. In the era before social media, the sketch comedy shows seemed like the best way for a comedian to demonstrate their identity to the public, because there's something loose and free about this format of just having these 2 to 5 minute funny stories with a beginning, a middle and an end. Sometimes they'd have a framing device, sometimes they'd just be cut together. Sometimes a single sketch would be cut apart and take place in bite-sized chunks splayed across the episode between other sketches. Maybe you'd have a Monty Python scattershot style, where a sketch about a man complaining to a pet shop that sold him a dead parrot just sort of drifts into the next sketch and outside characters invade the story. However it was done, sketch shows would always say something about the comedian's style or their fixations. Sketches from Harry Enfield and Chums were typically rooted in observations related to Britain's class-based society. Middle-class people are like this, working-class people are like this, teenagers are like this, etc. Lee and Herring's Fist of Fun was centred around stand-up bits that act like two blokes chatting shit in a pub, and sketches would just sort of naturally appear as a tangent to the conversation. The sketch show is a very versatile format that can be adapted to the style of whoever spearheaded it. My favourite was always Chris Morris's Jam, a sketch show with an ambient soundtrack styled like a series of dreams.
It's a brand new television, it's not supposed to have lizards in it.
And the thing about the sketch show was that it was a format incredibly well suited to the means of delivery of the time, broadcast television. If you sat on the sofa in the evening flicking through the channels and you land on a sketch show in the middle of a sketch, just wait until the next one starts and you'll probably follow along really easily. You don't have to worry about getting lost because they just deliver these snappy little stories about a man going into a shop to buy a ludicrously specific item.
Yes, I was wondering whether you had any pirate memory games suitable for children between the ages of 4 and 8.
You laugh, and then it's gone just like that. David Mitchell and Robert Webb's sketch show, That Mitchell and Webb Look, came in the midst of the Little Britain sketch show boom, and it was one of the more popular shows from that era. It was always seen as a little bit more respectable than the others in that scene. Like other sketch shows at the time, it demonstrated its identity through its fixations, like regular sketches about either historical characters or characters from classic literature, either becoming self-aware or being peppered with modern references, and the contrast makes it funny.
And pray, Miss Bennet, what do you call this quaint country dance?
We call it the conga, Miss Bingley. I am surprised you haven't heard of it.
There were also sketches set in the modern day with Python-esque zany scenarios and over-the-top characters. There were sci-fi ones as well, but they always had this same cynical, sarcastic tone that was representative of Mitchell and Webb's style as a comedy duo. Yes, they're smug and posh and above it all, but they do at least recognise that, and they were strikingly honest as comedians, and nowhere more so than in the following sketch from Series 3. Suddenly, the high-budget sketches stop, and we're in a studio, and David Mitchell is standing on a mostly blank stage and explaining not just that the budget has run out, but why the budget has run out.
I'm afraid the money has now run out. Episode 6 used to be paid for by DVD sales, and unfortunately they've gone through the floor in the last year or so because of YouTube and torrenting. Because particularly with a sketch show, all the items can be up on YouTube pretty much as soon as they've been broadcast, so why would you buy a DVD?
I see where this sketch came from. At the time, I was always seeing single sketches from That Mitchell and Webb Look uploaded to YouTube, still in its infancy at the time. And this is why I brought up that the sketch show was well suited to its means of delivery, broadcast television. And it was pretty obvious by the late 2000s when this sketch aired that TV was going to be a casualty of the internet, and broadcast TV was not going to be the way that sketches would be seen for much longer. This sense of despair at the way things were going isn't inconsistent with Mitchell and Webb's nihilistic tone throughout the show. The subjects and ideas vary wildly, but it's one of the most thematically consistent sketch shows of the period. Their sketches are usually about hyped up things turning out to be a massive disappointment, or things falling apart and people trying and failing to turn back the tide of despair at what the future holds. Like in this long-running series of sketches in which a group of survivors of some unspecified apocalyptic event make a game show to entertain anyone still left alive.
Let's see what Peter's won! That's right! It's fuel!
Trying to hold normal society together despite obvious decline. It's a very similar point to their most famous sketch about Nazi soldiers realising that they are the bad guys.
Have you noticed that our caps have actually got little pictures of skulls on them? Hands. Are we the baddies?
This sense of things being unstable and tending towards decay hangs over the show, not just in terms of their observations about exploitative TV shows and depictions of the past where elements of the future just sort of bleed into it. And this sketch admits that things are changing so fast that even the sketch show itself will inevitably become an unstable medium. And they were entirely correct in this assumption, because those sketches being uploaded to YouTube as single 3-minute videos turned out to be the future for the medium of the comedy sketch, whereas the original source of those 3-minute videos was ultimately doomed. There are still occasional British sketch shows getting made, but you don't see them nearly as often anymore, and that's not just because of piracy. Shows are always getting pirated, they always have been, they always will be. It's just a fact of life, and the industry has got to deal with that. And it's also not just because broadcast TV is a dying medium, and it feels weird to broadcast a 30-minute compilation of comedy sketches when most people watch comedy sketches in 2-minute chunks as Instagram reels, TikTok videos, or on YouTube these days. It's also not entirely because the cost of making TV has gone up, so it's becoming financially unviable to construct a set and pay for costumes for something that's only going to be on for 3 minutes, and then restart the process for the next sketch. Sure, all of these things are factors in the death of the sketch show, but what I think is the real reason that you don't see comedy sketch shows anymore is that the comedy sketch is no longer seen as having any real value. Sketch comedy is bigger than ever on social media, but it's only really bigger than ever because anyone can do it now, and so they do. Sketch comedy shows have mostly been dead for years, because anyone can do this with their phone and a green screen. So what's the point in throwing thousands of pounds at a TV crew? And the comedy sketch is a pretty unique medium that's accessible to anyone. It's not as if anyone can make a Netflix quality period drama with their phone. That shit costs money. Comedy sketches can be made with money or without. So why would you pay for an elaborate sketch like this one where parents protect their kids from germs by carting them around inside massive bottles, when someone can gain an audience for their sketch comedy on Instagram on a budget of basically nothing?
Which means you can be confident that your children are protected against bad humours, miasma, and fresh air.
The advent of social media and the decline of broadcast TV isn't in itself the reason that sketch shows have died, because the industry does see social media clips as being useful for promotion. Comedy shows are still getting popular off the back of social media. This Country was a mockumentary about a couple of jobless young people in the countryside, and social media clips drove that to massive success. But it's not a sketch show. Easily one of the most popular comedy shows of the last 10 years is Taskmaster, a silly game show where popular comedians take part in ridiculous tasks.
Completely empty this bathtub.
Fastest wins.
You must not remove the plug, tip or damage the bath.
The success of Taskmaster is largely driven by clips that are easily digestible on social media sites. The sketch show should be ideally suited to the current era of comedy, because clips online can be used as promotional material for the full show. Here's a self-contained little taster, now we've hooked you in, come see the full piece. But you don't see them anymore because there's something about the comedy sketch being brought down to the level of the every person that's devalued the form. Because if you're making comedy sketches, it essentially makes you just another content creator. And no one wants to be just another content creator because they feel that's in some way beneath them. It's the same way that about 7 years ago people like me started being referred to and referring to ourselves as video essayists. We're not YouTubers. Because YouTuber lumps you in with people who make Fortnite or Minecraft videos, or people who seemingly only exist entirely to have arguments with other YouTubers. No, if we give ourselves a more prestigious name, that sets us apart from the crowd of the every person using a platform that anyone has access to in order to make material that is in some way beneath the rest of us. The sketch show didn't die because the format doesn't fit with the internet, because it obviously does. The sketch show died because the TV industry wants to think it's better than the internet. The internet proved that anyone can do sketch comedy, so now the industry doesn't wanna. Part of me thinks this is snobbery on the part of the industry, but part of me understands where this view comes from, because when there's so many people making sketch comedy, passing out the good ones becomes incredibly difficult. And the amount of crap sketch comedy content on the internet reinforces to the industry that the comedy sketch is a worthless format. My social media feeds on a daily basis are filled with reels from someone doing "Life in your 20s is like this, whereas life in your 30s is like this." I don't blame them for doing it. Social media is a game and that's how it's played. You make what everyone else is making. But the problem is I don't really learn much about the comedic identity of the person making these videos because unlike a sketch show, there's no framework. And they're just throwing out these little sketches occasionally about the same topic, and their content is being dictated by having to cater to the needs of the algorithm of whatever platform they've made their home. Aging is relatable. Everybody ages. Okay, so if you're in your 30s, you used to go out, you used to party, you used to like a drink. Now you're tired all the time and everything hurts and hangovers can last for days. So let's do some variations on that theme. Sometimes, yes, you will get a genuinely gold sketch comedy channel. For example, I'm a big fan of Man Carrying Thing. It feels like I'm just drifting through stuff that occurs to him on a regular basis, just throwing out stuff that he's either watching, reading, or paying attention to. But the biggest problem with online sketch comedy is it's largely limited by the fact that nobody wants to pay to make an elaborate sketch anymore. If someone's just going to watch this on their phone for 2 minutes and then move on to someone else doing something similar, and that next person's thrown less effort and money at making their content, then it doesn't really feel worth it to make that expensive elaborate sketch in the first place. And so almost every comedy sketch being seen on your social media feeds now feels like basically the same worthless slop. So why bother doing something big and daring? And AI is only going to make this problem worse. Everyone's always complaining about AI videos and AI art for various reasons, and one of those reasons is that AI content crowds out the field of genuinely talented artists trying something new and daring, because they struggle to be found amongst the slop. But my point is that that's been happening for over a decade to the comedy sketch, as people have been focusing more on fitting in with what the algorithm wants than genuine artistic expression. And that right there is what killed the comedy sketch show. The fact that talent gets crowded out by slop. And because there's so much of it, the industry doesn't see a point in doing it anymore. Yes, there are genuinely talented people coming out of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, but they're so hard to find. And they don't have the money to make themselves stand out. And so the format continues to be neglected by an industry that thinks all sketch comedy is now is people going, "Your 20s are like this. Your 30s are like this. You used to be young, but now you're not. Time is moving forward ever faster. Your body is decaying right before your eyes. Man is born astride the grave. The light gleams an instant. Then it's night once more." Which leads me on to Mitchell and Webb's attempted revival of their old sketch show format after 15 years in their new show Mitchell and Webb Are Not Helping. And to answer the question posed at the beginning of this video, is it bad or not? And the answer is, it's fine. It's basically just that Mitchell and Webb look again with new bit players and better colour grading. It's hit and miss like it always was, some gold, some meh. The sketches blending the past, present and future together, modern observational stuff about how the world is confusing, scary and mean-spirited. It's still thematically consistent and has this air of despair and decay about it. But rather than being just another revival of a show that hasn't been seen in years like most reboots, it feels to me like there is an actual point in doing this again because of all the context that I've spent this video talking about. And that's made completely blatant by the opening sketch, which is about people in the 19th century who've recently had an indoor toilet installed. But they're refusing to use it because it's new and scary and they've always done things the old way and they don't understand why the old way is now outdated.
Why do we have to go to a whole special room just to do a shit? What's wrong with just shitting in a pot and throwing it out the window?
This is obviously metatextual commentary on the fact that a high-budget British comedy sketch show with elaborate sets and costumes exists in 2025. This is how we used to do things, and it seems backwards and wrong in the modern day, but it doesn't have to. We used to throw our shit out the window, and we can still throw our shit out the window if we want to. I know a few people who are hovering at the door of the industry who grew up on Mitchell and Webb, and they're hoping that the old guard of that 2000s bubble of sketch shows returning to their old format either revives the sketch show, or at least makes the industry wake up to the idea that the medium of the comedy sketch isn't totally artistically bankrupt. Look, see, it can still be fun and interesting if it has a decent amount of money chucked at it, but I don't think Mitchell and Webb actually believe that their return to the format will do that on its own, because although yes, the characters reject the indoor toilet in this sketch, society did accept indoor toilets eventually, and the show is called Mitchell and Webb Are Not Helping. Maybe it is like any other reboot, a self-serving exercise in nostalgia done so Mitchell and Webb can be wistful and nostalgic for the old days. But I'm not convinced this new show is a totally self-serving exercise specifically because of what that Mitchell and Webb look was and what's happened to its genre. That Mitchell and Webb look had classic sketches and classic characters, and there's the odd nod to them, but nostalgia doesn't take centre stage. There's no Number Wang, there's no Sir Digby Chicken Caesar. They got now incredibly famous former bit player of theirs, Olivia Colman, back for one random sketch in the middle of episode 2. The medium is the star of the show here. It's not really a show about Mitchell and Webb themselves or any of the material they've come out with. Mitchell and Webb Are Not Helping is more of a conversation piece than it is an actual show. It's asking, why don't we do comedy like this anymore? Because we can do comedy like this. Look, we did it. And that's why I started out with the point about thing bad consuming the conversation whenever there's a cultural talking point. It doesn't actually matter if Mitchell and Webb Are Not Helping is good or not. The fact it exists is the point.